Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Sean Huggins and this is Europe with Hugs. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are back with Walter's World and we're checking out working in Europe versus working in the USA. What no one's talk about. All right, link to the original video down in the description as always. I've made a video or two about this on my other channel, Sean Huggins, my main YouTube channel, but I'm curious what somebody else has to say about it and if maybe Walter's World's experience is different than mine, or if your experiences as Europeans are different from mine or whatever. I don't know. We're going to find out together right here, right now. So enough yapping. Let's just hop straight into it. Here we go.
Hey there, fellow travelers, or should I say fellow worker abroaders? Mark here with Walter's World, and today what I'll talk about are some of the differences that Americans notice when they come to work in Europe. Because a lot of people, their dream is, I'm going to move to Europe, I'm going to work there, and everything's going to be great. And it can be. I've actually lived in Europe for like 12 years, 13 years, and worked in a lot of different places. I worked in Lithuania, I worked in Portugal, I worked in Austria, I've gone all over, worked with the locals, been part of the team, had to pay the taxes and all those things. And I kind of want to go through some of the differences that American workers really kind of notice when they come to work in Europe. And sometimes you'll see the jokes that, oh, they get all the vacation time, haha. Yeah, that's true. But there's also some more serious things as well, okay? And I want to start with the one that people talk about the most. You have so much more time off when you work in Europe than when you work in the US.
Definitely.
And I'm not just talking the vacation time they give you, I'm talking about just normal holidays they give you off, which is really nice because you can have a much better work-life balance when you're in Europe than in the US, okay? Because you just have more time to be you. You have more time to be with your family. You have more time to exist on your own without just having work be everything. And that's one of those nice things to it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that people notice is just that amount of free time you do have. Because
yeah, so quick background, I was living and working in Germany for a few years. So that's my experience working in Europe. I didn't work technically in other places. So of course, not everywhere in Europe is the exact same, but by and large, it's a lot more similar than working in the USA, that's for sure. The work culture in most of Europe is very, very different from the work culture in USA, without a doubt. And for Germany specifically, you get a lot more bank holidays, which is just standard days off. You get way more standard vacation time that you can use whenever you want or whenever you're approved by your manager or whatever. And you get basically unlimited sick leave. I know it's technically not unlimited, but like basically unlimited sick leave. It's not like in America where your company straight up tells you you can only be sick 1 week per year or whatever. So it's definitely like a very different system and it leads to a lot more time off basically from your job. But when you are working, at least when I was working in Germany, I was still working roughly 40 hours a week, which is basically the same as the standard in the USA. So when you are working, you're expected to work hard and efficiently and, you know, essentially the same amount as in America. It's just that you have a lot more holidays, you have sick leave that you can take, you have more maternity leave, you have more bank holidays, you have all these other days off that you can have standard where you don't have that in the USA. So that's kind of where the working less or the more work-life balance comes in, more so than like you move to Europe and, oh, you only have to work 10 hours a week. Well, no, that's not really how it is. You still have to work 40 hours a week roundabout, but you get more holidays, you get more sick leave, you get more maternity leave and all these kinds of things. And that's where the work-life balance really differentiates itself from the USA.
Another thing that Americans notice when they come to Europe is work stops when work stops. If work is 9 to 5, you work 9 to 5. You can be mid-sentence, it's 5 o'clock, we're out. And no one holds it against you. There's no like, oh, we need to stay in for the team. No, we're pulling an all-nighter tonight. We need you to work an extra 10 hours this weekend. No, that stuff doesn't happen.
That's true.
Like, I mean, it can happen, but it doesn't really happen. It's much more, oh, work's over. We didn't get it done. We didn't get it done. Moving on till Monday. I got stuff to do this weekend. Bye. And that's it. There's the boundaries that are here. Like, work is not everything. You don't get defined by it, which is really kind of cool. So you're not staying late. You're not working the weekends. You're only there when the hours you're supposed to work, which is really nice. And I will say another thing you notice is work is a bit slower because you don't have that going overtime, doing all this stuff. Things do take more time, and that's where a lot of Americans sometimes get frustrated with their European colleagues because
I did not experience this, but then again, I only have experience in my adult life working in Germany, where everything is about efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. So maybe that's why. Maybe if you are working in somewhere like Spain or Greece, maybe it's the culture to be more slow pace while working. I'm not sure. But in Germany, it was very, if you're showing up to work, you only work 40 hours in a week. And yes, you don't have to work overtime or whatever. But when you're there, you're going, full speed, basically,
Like, oh, can we just knock this project out and move on? Oh, why are you taking so long? Why you have a lunch break? You have a coffee break? Can we just move through? And so they get that U.S. get that frustrated with the kind of the slow work kind of stuff, or at least I would say the not hurry up and rush kind of thing. It's like, hey, we're gonna get it done when we get it done. Don't worry about it. And that's the thing is people, they're not worrying about it. It's not like work is everything. And I think that's a big thing to mention is you are not defined by your work in Europe. In the U.S., it's like, I live to work. And here in Europe, it's more like I work.
Well, I always hear this, I live to work versus I work to live. In the USA, you kind of have to work to live too. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to, just put a roof over your head in the USA with how jobs are and stuff. So you kind of have to work your butt off in order to just get the kind of bare minimum. And maybe because there's more social programs in Europe that maybe there's more safety nets. Maybe that contributes to it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily that people in the USA love working hard. It's just like if you don't, then you get left behind and then you don't have a job and then you're poor and then you're homeless and then that's your life. Kind of.
To pay for the fantastic food. I mean, it's just part of life, but that's not my life. Like, I honestly can say, like, when I did my PhD and master's and stuff, when I did it in Europe, when I look back on it, I don't think of it like I did my PhD in Portugal. It was, I lived in Lisbon.
Wow, those
like
chains.
It was a life.
Look at those
chains. You had that
chains.
separation, and you're not defined by it. And that's one of those things that's really nice, is that you can be you. Like, that's one of the things I really loved about working here. But one of the things that you'll notice that you might not like when you do work in Europe is you're not really truly friends with your coworkers. Now, you can be friendly with your coworkers and you're probably more likely to go get drinks on a Friday after work with people, but making that close friendship bond, it's not as much there here in Europe because a lot of people...
I don't know if I've ever made close friends with people that I've worked with. I've usually just gone, the people that I'm friends with now are people that I grew up with, basically. So, I don't know. I don't think I can relate to this one personally.
Well, they live and work in the city they grew up in. So they have friends since they were little kids. They're still friends with their buddy from kindergarten, first grade, when they're 50 years old, 60 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old, whatever. And therefore, you as a foreigner coming in, it's hard to get into a friendship circle because they already have their friends. And that's why sometimes expats end up leaving destinations that are super cool because they're lonely. You live in a city with millions of people and you don't have friends. And it is really tough. That's why I'm saying sometimes it's easier if you're going to be an expat in a place to be an expat in a Paris, a London, a Milan, a Berlin, where a lot of people have come and moved to, but not just international expats coming there, but also people from all over Italy move to Milan. People from all over Germany move to Berlin. So they're looking for friends as well. So it's a little bit easier to make friends. But that is one of those things is you might have it that you're not really super friends with your colleagues. And some of them you'll still call Herr Wolters after you've been working with them for 30 years. You're still Herr Wolters and not even on a first name sometimes. So do be aware of that. Now, it's not always the case. You can make friends, but
apparently
I think it is one of those things that's important to mention because finding that good friend base when you first move abroad is really important so you have that social connection. Now, another thing that I will definitely tell you is true is if you come and work in Europe, you do not make anywhere near the same amount of money as you do in the US. Like, that's why a lot of Europeans like going.
Depends on your job. If you have a incredibly entry-level job, you may very well make more in Europe. Like, minimum wage job in Europe pays more than a minimum wage job in the USA generally. Depends on the area in each of those locations, but generally minimum wage is higher in Europe than a lot of places in the USA. So, but other than that, I would agree. Once you get out of that minimum wage entry level zone, then I think statistically the USA pays a bit more on average from what I saw in previous videos, but I don't think it's like astronomically higher. I think it's pretty comparable, to be honest.
Going to the US because they make a lot of money, they can get more stuff, and so you do have that. And so when you think about it, maybe that's something when you think about your retirement, you're thinking about, hey, what am I going to do in the future? You have to think about those things. That's why when I have students like, oh, Mark, I want to go work in Europe, like, all right, well, do you have college loans? Because you still have to pay them off, and you might make as much money to pay it off as fast as you do in the US. But then they're like, yeah, but in Europe we don't pay for our education, so it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, that's why there's a little bit of difference, but the pay gap is a real thing. Like between the US and the EU, I mean, I won't lie to you. Like some places you do get paid better. Switzerland, Germany, England, you get paid real.
Well, maybe that's why I feel that way, because I was working in Germany, but I don't know. You guys are the experts. You guys are the Europeans, so you'll have to let me know.
Really well. Like those are like, okay, comparable, you're doing okay, but go work in Portugal. Go work in Eastern Europe. Like the money is, literally a fraction of what you make in the US.
Sure,
so that's one thing I think is
sense.
important to mention. However, you do get more with your money when you live in Europe, when you work in Europe, because you do have more benefits. Maybe you get paid a 13th month out of the year, or sometimes a 14th month out of the year. So those there, maybe you get credits for childcare, or you get credits for, transportation allowances. So there's a little bit more
social
like
credits?
Freebies in Europe that they give with you versus just, oh, look, a pizza party, thanks, boss, that you get in the US. And kind of looking at things in general. I know when I worked in Europe, I made less money than I did when I worked in the US, but I will say life in Europe is cheaper. I mean, living, existing, loving life is just cheaper in Europe than it is in the US. I mean, that's why I tell people all the time.
Depends what area of the US. Like if you want to live in a decent place, then yeah, in Europe. But you can move to the middle of absolute nowhere in the USA and live for next to no money, but there's nothing around except like, I don't know, cattle or something. You could buy a house for next to nothing and just live in the middle of nowhere, but the nearest hospital is an hour drive away, and like there's one singular store, there's no restaurants, you have two neighbors, and you get the idea. It's possible, but you're not going to want to live in that area, most likely.
You're going to go on vacation. Once you get to Europe, it is cheaper to enjoy Europe than it is to enjoy, the US. I mean, I'm here in Torino, which is a relatively expensive city in Italy.
It's definitely a lot easier to travel to different countries in Europe because different countries are a lot closer.
And it's still cheaper than going to Orlando for me. Accommodation, going out to eat, it's better than there, right? And so you think about that, it's like, yeah, I don't make as much, but I don't need as much money as well, because you are more in the city and more things are going on, right? And that's why it's important to mention your transportation to work is a lot different. It's not a car-based society in Europe. You are switching to public transportation. Now, if you worked in the big city in the US, probably you might already use the L in Chicago or the trains, in New York. But public transportation isn't a thing in the US. And when you come to Europe, it becomes integrated into your thing. So you're learning when I need to take the bus, when does that metro go by? I remember when I lived in Berlin, I knew exactly where my S-Bahns were going, and I'm like, I gotta get up that escalator. Like, it's definitely different than, I gotta sit in the traffic jam to get to work. Now, don't get me wrong, you can get a car, and believe me, you drive in Europe, you're gonna be in a traffic jam every day because there's not a lot of space, but also just to get into work is a different experience. And you'll notice there's a reason why in the US, our cars have nice cup holders and really good stereo systems, because we sit in our cars all the time, we're drinking on our way, whereas here in Europe.
What? Do cars in Europe not have cup holders and stereo systems? Huh? What?
Huh? It's a shorter commute,
this is
but
news
also
to
with
me.
the crazy drivers and so many more packed things, you don't have time to change the channel. You don't have time to focus on what you're driving. Now, another money thing you'll notice is a bit different is taxes. Yeah, you're going to pay a lot more taxes when you are here in Europe.
I don't think that. I think that this is a little bit blown out of proportion when you actually run the numbers. Yes, it's more, but it's not nearly as much as it would seem judging by what everybody says on like social media and stuff. As far as I could tell, you don't actually end up paying that much more per year in taxes, but when you look at what you get in return, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, I'll take universal health care. Sure. Thank you. Please and thank you. That's worth the price. So I think that this is a little bit blown out of proportion, while even though it might technically be true, you know.
Than you are in the U.S. In general, I'm just going to say that if you're making decent money, a lot more comes out, especially if you're going like to Sweden or Norway, Finland. Like taxes do get a bit higher, so that's one of those things you'll notice it in your check that a lot more is missing when you're working in Europe. But you do get more stuff with it, so that's one of those things. Like, oh, I do have relatively cheap healthcare or free public healthcare. Yeah, maybe the NHS isn't the greatest, but it's included with living here, so I guess that's okay. But I will say, like, for the things you're not gonna like, the biggest one that Americans like have a tough time adjusting to is European bureaucracy. Like, I know we've got the DMV in the US, and that's our one example of like
coming from Germany. Ooh, true. Oh man,
annoying bureaucracy. But oh my gosh, try to get internet at your house. Try, if you're in France, try to schedule a pickup of that Amazon package with a delivery driver. It's insane, right? The levels of bureaucracy, the level of things you have to go through, the hoops you jump through, the forms you sign, the stamps you need. Oh, you know, and a lot of it's these catch-22s. Like, oh, hey, I need to get an apartment, but important to get in. But in order to get an apartment, I need a bank account. But in order to get a bank account, I need an apartment where I have an address. The bureaucracies here are such next level that for Americans, they get very frustrated with it.
To be fair, we have a lot of bureaucracy in America as well, but I think it just gets extra frustrating when you're already trying to move your life to a different continent and figure out the new culture and figure out the new job and figure out a place to live and figure out how the banking system even works and all this other stuff. And then on top of that, you have to deal with the bureaucracy of people seemingly throwing more and more hurdles at you and hoops for you to jump through arbitrarily, at least from what it seems in my experience with dealing with German bureaucracy. It was a nightmare quite a few times for different reasons, from my work visa to my trying to get married and all kinds of stuff. It was a nightmare multiple times for a multitude of different reasons.
Now, another thing I think is important to mention about your workplace actually here in Europe is don't expect everyone to fall in line with the boss. Like, the boss isn't necessarily God. Now, some parts of Europe, the boss is kind of like a godlike figure, but in general, you have a lot more discussion, a lot more consensus at work than in the US, where it's kind of like, well, the boss says this, so why are we even debating it? Here, you do have that open debate. And for some Americans, they're like, oh my gosh, he's talking back to the boss. What are you doing? You're gonna get fired. No, you have much more discussion that's here. And the thing, one of the reasons why you have that is, another difference is you don't worry about getting fired in Europe like you do in the US. Like,
that's true.
I think I do a great job where I teach, but every year I'm still worried that I'm not going to get asked to come back the next year. I mean, it's very much a worrisome thing. Like, you have the at-will work environment at the US that you never know, right? Whereas in Europe, you have a lot more protections. Like, you're not worried that you're going to get fired because your boss had a bad day, because your union is there for you, or there's protections by law that if you do get fired, they have to pay you for a year or two or something like that. Like, those kind of things make a difference. Mothers, they're not worried about having kids because they have protection for maternity leave, and they get paid maternity leave, paid paternity leave. I mean, those kind of things make a difference. So you do feel more comfortable, like you can share your true feelings about a project. Hey, what do we need to do? And so you have a different mentality. And also, I think another difference is the mentality of the workforce. It's not as much like grind and the hustle and I need my side hustle kind of stuff like you have in the US. It's much more of that laid back attitude, that laissez-faire attitude when it comes to work. And then I want to mention one thing that I did notice when I worked in Europe is you're not going to have as much diversity in your workforce here in Europe as you do in the US. Just because Europe in general, like you're in Italy, it's full of Italians. So there's a lot more Italians, a lot less diversity in the workers than you have in the US, which is a melting pot of places. Now, if you go to like bigger cities, if you're in Milan or Paris or London, you're going to have more of that. Like, the UK has much more diversity, France has much more diversity, but that's one of those things when you work, you'll notice that there's not a lot of diversity sometimes in your workplace when you're here in Europe. So if you've been an expat working in Europe, tell us, where have you worked? What was your experience? And what were some of the differences that you had?
Yeah, like I said, I was working in Germany and it was very different, but also not bad. definitely not bad at all. I'll leave a link to the video that I made on my other channel down in the description if you want to check it out. But I'm curious what you guys, the experts, have to say about it, since you are the Europeans after all, so you would know what are the different working climates like, what are the different cultural norms like with working in different countries around Europe. So let me know what you think of the video. Is this stuff true? Did he get some of this stuff wrong? And if so, what? Leave your comments down in the comment section below. And when you're done there, consider subscribing, leaving a like, all that good stuff for the algorithm. You guys know the deal. That being said, though, that's all the time that I have for today. So thank you guys so much for being here. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.